All right, we're back with the next step. Our podcast talking to fathers about the most important step a man can take, which is always the next one. Check it out. Today I have a super special guest. This is Mr. Dr. Sean Festoon.
Official title.
Sean is a good friend of mine and actually one of my favorite minds to, for lack of a better term, battle. Like he's really, like, the way we met was we were sitting on a rooftop and essentially just threw down for about 4 hours talking about how each of us disagreed with the other person.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of that, rather than like walking away and being like, I hate that guy, it was like, this guy is going to be a lifelong friend, just because it was refreshing to have a passionate engagement with someone, like where we vehemently disagreed, but at the end of it could still be like, dude, I see the value in what you're saying, and I'm happy to continue this relationship. And since then, we've gone and visited him over in the middle of nowhere in the East Coast. He's come out here and he's visited us. We've stayed in touch via business stuff over the years, and just kind of parenting stuff. Our old parenting podcast, we interviewed he and his wife. We're also, different places in life now. So I'd like to put you out there, Sean, and just say, what are your fatherhood credentials at this point in time? What you got going on?
Yeah. 4 kids, 3 quasi on purpose, and a 4th that we didn't mind bringing into the world. So I have a 9-year-old girl, a 7-year-old girl, a 5-year-old girl, and a 6-month-old boy at the time of this recording. And I was actually speaking with my wife this morning about, we used to say we were done at 3, but we didn't do anything to make sure we were done at 3. Like, I have a vasectomy now, right? We're done. And it's so interesting because we didn't know that we really were missing something in our lives with the 4th kid. And once he came along, I don't know if it's because he's a boy. I don't know if it's because when we had the first 3, we were still embroiled in the chaos of the life that we were trying to create. My wife was working, long commute. I was working long days, and I was focused on work when I wasn't working. This is the first time we've had a baby where I have the maturity and the wherewithal to be present and to enjoy the moments as the baby was coming into the world and was evolving in the world. And there's been some really nice sense of closure and permanence to creating new kids.
Yeah. I actually think about it a lot. I feel the same way about, obviously, for us, it was more around the 3rd, but really around the 4th. But I wonder if you can feel that way about the 1st, 2nd. I don't know if it's possible to have. I think you have to go through the turmoil of the 1st and 2nd and the chaos that is the 1st, 2nd, and even 3rd to really be in the place that you are to enjoy the 4th the way that you do. And I constantly think about, is it possible to get there sooner? Or do you have to go through the experience?
For me, it wasn't. For somebody else, maybe it is. And what I'll share is this. Having the 4th and realizing where I wasn't present on the first 2 or even 3 has given me the perspective to go back and be more present with 1, 2, and 3 than I was when they were young, or than I would even be now at the ages that they're at, because it gives me the perspective of, they're only going to be this age for this long too. And so do 9-year-old things with the 9-year-old, do 7-year-old things with a 7-year-old, do 5-year-old things with a 5-year-old, and do 6-month-old things with a 6-month-old, but be there for all of them. I would love to go back to one thing that you mentioned earlier, because I think it's important for people to know this. You're also my favorite person to disagree with and to battle with. And the reason why I consider you a friend is because when I go into battle with you, for lack of a better word, you're one of the only people who help me get better at either thinking about how I want to present what I'm saying or change my belief. Where other people, when I battle with them, I don't want to battle with them again because I'm not there to change your mind. I'm there to try and understand your perspective and share my mind, and then to hear what comes back and to decide if I want to make changes. And most people don't have the interest in having that level of a disagreement that you do. And I appreciate that in you.
Well, thanks, man. I mean, I can say the same about you. Like that's very well articulated in terms of what that back and forth is like. I wonder why more people don't view it like that. I wonder, or have conversations, or are willing to have conversations at that level. Do you think it has to do with competency mixed with like an openness and a curiosity? Because, yeah.
Well, my wife doesn't like to do that. And I've asked her why she doesn't like to do it. And it's a combination of some of your unique ability and some of my unique ability is articulating a point and saying something very, very clearly off of very little information in response to what we said. So I might say that, well, that sky is blue. And you might say, no, that sky is a silver gray or a blue gray. I would have a response to that speaks to the intent that I was providing about saying it was blue, rather than arguing with you about the shade. And it would come out very quickly and it would be very clearly understood. She doesn't have that skill. And so she doesn't enjoy the back and forth sparring in the moment because she feels overwhelmed by my ability to articulate and feels like that's the only moment that she has to have that moment, if that makes sense.
Oh, it makes total sense. I mean, Taz is the same way. You know, I think both of our wives are very supremely intelligent. They're like very smart people, but they're not quick with their wrapping around it. At least this is my experience with my wife, is like she'll have something to say, but it'll take a day or two for her to like really articulate and boil down to what she wants to say. So like an in the moment banter where we're going back and forth is not gonna provide fruit.
Correct.
It's just gonna be like a bicker session, you know, like where nothing really gets done. But it's definitely something that I've had to learn over the years, which ironically enough was what I had to learn in our actual bickering and fighting, was to just shut up and let it go. Because like if I kept picking because I could, it never ended. Because she would just stick her little stake in the ground, and even if there wasn't anything there, like she wouldn't budge, and it would just be this constant bicker fest. And eventually, like I learned to let go and just stop. And when I stopped, it was immediately like, oh, I'm sorry too, and like we left. So that was yeah. That was a big moment for me, was like, because I can think on my feet in a certain way, like, and I don't know, letting go of needing to do anything there was huge for our actual relationship. Yeah. Let's see. You've had these 4 kids now, and you've had 3 girls, you've had the 1 boy. What are the biggest differences you note between the first 3 going into the 4th? Is there differences in the kids, or do you think it's more differences in you?
My 4 kids could not be more different than each other. And I don't know if that's because they all came along during different phases of my wife and my development, or because that's just how genetics works. But what I can say is this: one of the things that we've gone back and forth about is, after the 3rd, my wife went through some fairly severe postpartum mood disorder where it was, it was up and it was way down. And our 3rd kid is the wildest. And I don't, who knows if that has anything to do with it. But with our 4th kid, one of the things that I can say for absolute certainty is, because it was the first time that I had the wherewithal and the mind, the presence of mind to recognize this is the last time that these things are ever going to happen. I've been very calm through all of those things happening. Getting peed on. I'm not like, oh man, I gotta change my shirt. It's like, I haven't been peed on by another person ever. This is actually pretty cool. When he was first born, we didn't want him to be in our bedroom. because then we both lose sleep. And I didn't want my wife, who was recovering from having a baby, to have to wake up in the middle of the night to recover. I moved into the nursery. And so I lived in there for 4 months until he slept through the night. And when he would wake up at 2 a.m, I was up, and I was frankly excited to spend one-on-one time with nobody else, with no other sounds, except me and my son bonding in a rocking chair and feeding him a bottle. It was inconvenient, right? Don't get me wrong. I don't want parents who are listening to this to think like he liked all of that. No, I didn't like all of it, but I loved the moment of it, if that makes sense. Like you can change your perspective from up again to I knew I was going to be up. I chose to be up. I'm going to enjoy what being up has to offer to me. And I don't know if it's cause and effect or just, which way it goes, chicken or the egg. Is it because he did this for me or I did this for him? But he's so calm and so easy as a baby that I can't help but think that there's some correlation there, whether it's him to me or me to him.
There's got to be. But how old is he now?
6 months.
6 months, yeah. I definitely felt a similar thing with our most recent. It was easier to accept the difficulty earlier on, and then it became quite joyous, all the moments, and like you said, brings you present with like your other kids too, and you can just be there more. One of the things that we're going through right now is he's 2, and our guy is like done this. It's not a sleep regression. It's like we had a few things go down. Like Taz was done breastfeeding, so and she was down to just breastfeeding on one boob anyway, and she would only do it to put him to sleep. And if he woke up in the middle of the night, it was the thing that soothed him. But she was done with that, so we were like, okay, we're gonna wean him off that. And it may have been too soon, but you never know. I mean, with some kids it's earlier on, some kids it's a little bit later, but more importantly than anything, Taz was done. And so she's like, I'm done with this. Like, I want my boobs back. Like, I want this whole thing. So we stopped breastfeeding him, which means I would go in the middle of the night and I would either give him a bottle or I would kind of be there with him. But he's like really mad about that. And to the point where he'll scream for like an hour and a half. And if I go in to console him, he wants nothing to do with me, like punch, bite, hit, kick, and it's gnarly. And when he was in his crib, you could just kind of leave him in his little baby jail, and he would tire himself out after probably 15 minutes and then go back to sleep. But it directly correlated or simultaneously happened where he could climb out of his crib as we did this. So he in the middle of the night maybe that spurred him to be that strong. He would just muscle up his way over the crib and just throw himself out of the crib, like onto the floor, and you'd hear this big thump, and then we'd walk in the room and he'd be at the door banging on the door. So we took the side off of his crib, but now he can just walk around his room. So now he's refusing to go to sleep for like an hour. Like you have to sit in there with him while he just all he does is say please and beep beep, which is like his cars. He likes cars. And screams. And then in the middle of the night, he wakes up and does the same for like an hour and a half. And I'm like, fuck you. Like it's so bad. Because I'm like, okay, we're going to be, maybe I'll soothe you or something. And he's like biting and kicking for like an hour and nothing will soothe him. Like I'll pull out an ice pack and slap it on his face and be like, shh, and he won't, he'll just like push the ice pack off and just like, ah, like it's gnarly. So I hope you don't go through that.
I hope I don't either. And I'll share with you something I learned from a behaviorist that may have absolutely no relevance to your current situation.
But I'll take it.
Right? Like I think one of the mistakes that parents make is they think this worked for my kid in this situation, so it will definitely work for you and your kid and yours, not taking into consideration all of the confounding variables before, during, and after.
For sure. I think humans do that in general.
Yeah.
This worked for me. I should tell the world that it worked for me, because it'll work for them.
Yeah.
That's a very common thing. But yeah.
So what happened? My daughter, when she was about to, my first daughter, number one, fell down the stairs in the house. Now our stairs are carpeted. It's 5, a landing, 5, a landing, 5. So she didn't get hurt, but she got scared. And after that day, she would not walk down the stairs by herself anymore, despite having the ability to do it. So I would have to go up to the top of the stairs and carry her down. And if I didn't, she would just stay up there and she would scream. And I didn't know what to do. And my biggest concern as a fairly new parent was like, I don't want to give my kid a core memory that she doesn't even remember until she's on a therapist's couch in 25 or 30 years, right? That traumatizes her. So I called a board certified behavior analyst to come over and help me figure out what I should be doing with the kid. Just so happened she was a friend, and she's very, very good. And what she taught me that day was whatever behavior your daughter exhibits that gets your attention will be the behavior that she exhibits when she wants your attention. So what she said, she's like, we're going to lock all of the doors up here. She cannot get into any of the bedrooms. We're removing all of the things that are fun up here for her to do. And we're going to take all of the things that are the most fun for her and put them at the bottom of the stairs. Her favorite snacks, her favorite games, her favorite stickers, right? Everything was at the bottom of the stairs where we were. And she said, once we start, you have to commit to seeing this all the way through. I said, okay. She's like, she will not hurt herself. So I was like, okay, like whatever. You know, it's kind of like the person who tells you at the bottom of a hike, bring a jacket, and you're like, it's 75 degrees, and then the top of the hike, you're like, shoot who she was talking about. So anyway, 3 hours later, my daughter had done everything from thrown herself on the ground to gone over to doors and smashed her head into the doors over and over and over and over again to try and get my attention. And my friend would say to me, pay no attention to that. As soon as she stops and she's calm, just ask her again. Would you like to come downstairs and have a snack or play a game or get a sticker? And that's it. And we did that on repeat for 3 hours. Without her there, there's no way I'd do that. I'm like, oh, enough of this. My daughter finally just decided nothing I'm doing is going to get the attention of mom and dad to do what I want. And she walked down the stairs. And we never had a problem with her walking down the stairs again. Now, I will say bedtime carries with it a different element of problems, which are you're tired, the kid's tired, and you have 3 other kids who this kid's going to wake, who are going to be...
No, that's fine. They're old. They're fine.
Fine. That's a problem for us. So, I don't know. Maybe ride it out. Like not go in there. See if he just goes back to his bed and goes to sleep.
Yeah, and that's what I did relatively recently, and I think it's just a coordination with my wife and I figuring out how to do that and come to terms with it.
Campfire.
It's a little interesting. What was that?
You do a campfire. You're like, hey, exactly. we're gonna pull an all-nighter.
Yeah.
Or a long night. We have a babysitter tomorrow during the day, and we know he's gonna lose his mind, but we're not even gonna be inside to hear it.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna have to baby-proof his room a little bit better because he's oddly he has this lack of self-preservation.
Yeah.
Like all of my other kids had a bit of self-preservation. This one will like literally throw his head into the ground, like you said, like against and I'm like, whoa, like what are you doing? Or he'll like climb up where his toys are and try to turn the light on. So he climbs up to the top of it and he's like 5 feet up and he'll just like let go off the top of it. And you're like, dude, what are you doing? Like, and you can watch him on his little demon cam with his eyes glowing red. And anyway, I agree though. I think the making sure that you're on the same page and following through with that is one of the keys to a lot of the like disciplinary things within parenthood. I know there's been arguments and especially like sleep training specifically, you know, where once the kid learns how to go through sleep training, the parent sleeps better, the kid sleeps better. But as I understand it, there's still studies that show when they're in the middle of the night, their cortisol levels are going up again. Even if they're not screaming out, they're still stressed, but they're sleeping better. So it's like, I don't know which one's damaging more, like going in and making them dependent upon you and that thing, or them not getting sleep, or I don't know. It's always up for
To me, that look, I haven't seen a longitudinal study of thousands of kids who got sleep trained and thousands of kids who didn't to see how well mannered they are at tolerating stress as adults. And so that to me, whenever there's stuff like that that comes up, that there's controversial and both side disagreement on, I always, whenever young parents or new parents will ask me, like, what did you do? My answer to them is, it doesn't matter what we did. It matters what you want to do. Because there isn't evidence that you're right either way that's irrefutable. So it's got to match your lifestyle. You make the decision and then just be steadfast in it. And one thing I'll say to what you were describing before about the parents being on the same page, that's critical. Right? Parents being on the same page that this is what we're committing to, I think that's so important, which is why our kids know mommy comes before you to daddy. We have a relationship that is really important because then we can take care of you together. And you are the most important thing in the world to us. What I find is that depending on how much other stuff there is on my mind that needs to get done, my level of calm and patience with the kids when they're losing their minds is variable. So if I have nothing else to do, we can ride it out. But when I have stuff to do, I struggle to. And oftentimes when I get angry at the kids, I'm actually angry at my wife because whatever reason, right? And so we talk that out and we improve.
I often think about that is like and you and I both are in such privileged places when it comes to the lives that we have and we've built. And I say privileged just in the sense that there's a lot that we don't have to think about necessarily, which allows us the freedom to focus on being more present or something along those lines. Like if we were worried about whether or not we were going to eat next week, or whether or not we could pay rent, or like those kinds of things would be such large stressors that I think it'd be really hard to have the presence to be like, okay, I'm going to ride this out. I'm going to ride this little tantrum out. And I see where some people resort to, just doping their kids, give them the crappy food or the video games or whatever it is. But at the same time, those things make it harder to parent. So like I have this like weird back and forth in my head where I'm like, I understand why parents go these easier in the moment routes, but with the presence of mind that I have of being able to look at it from like a 10,000 foot view and like I don't have to worry about so much and I can focus on it, I can see the outcome of doing those things often is long-term very negative and makes your parenting life harder in so many ways. In the moment, not so much, but in the long run, a lot. So I don't know.
Well, it's not our solution to come up with, right? And I agree with you. We are in a position of privilege that in some ways we were born into and in other ways we earned. Right? We didn't choose to be born in the United States, but we were. And so that's an opportunity that a lot of other people just don't have right away. But I think most of your listeners probably were also born in the Western world. And so they share that privilege. Having kids has made me better at everything. It's made me a better friend to people. It's made me a better spouse. It's made me a better business owner. It's made me a better leader. It's made me a better version of me all the way around. And so when you describe our position of privilege as a way that we are able to not worry about other things, that makes it sometimes easier or less inconvenient to parent our kids in a way that we deem is more desirable for both the short and long term than somebody else. What I would say to somebody who's in a position of less privilege right now, maybe they have less financial freedom, maybe they're single, they don't actually have a spouse, maybe they're working 2 jobs, whatever the situation is, I empathize with that. And I cannot and will not tell you how to do parenting or life. I would ask you to ask yourself what would be different, what would have to be different about you to be able to parent your kids in a way that you would prefer to parent your kids outside of factors you can control. So, meaning, let's just pretend you are going to work the same job and make the same money. For example, you're single, you're not going to have a spouse. Let's just pretend that's where you are, and nothing is going to change there. How would you like to parent your kids? What are the reasons that come up for why you can't do that now? Write all of that down. And then you can ask yourself, what of these are true? And what of these do I actually have influence over? And then you look at the ones you have influence over and you can say to yourself, which of these, if changed, makes the rest easier to change? And you can start from there. And I think it's an exercise that is useful for you to do, for me to do, and for people with even more means and time than you or me to do.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, I think that self-reflection is essential to continuing to improve and to examine and work on things. And I think the important thing that I've found is that it's kind of like a one at a time and a long-term little action sort of deal. So like I find myself journaling and writing those things down all the time. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to work on all this. But it's actually just one thing. It's actually just like one little thing. Like I'm going to, in these specific times, try to take the beat and hold my breath and respond differently. And like that's the one thing. Because like I find there's so many we could work on. Like there's so many different parts of our being that we can work on, that if we try to work on them all, very few of them stick. And it's just like the little things, and it's over time. And that's actually one of the best, like when you and I have chatted last, I wasn't a journaler, but in this last like 5 years, I've become one. And one of the fascinating things for me is I write the same shit down over and over again. Like, and I don't remember. Like I'll go back and I'll read my old journals and I'm like, whoa, like 3 years ago, I'm writing the same thing that I'm writing here, but I'm like slightly better because it's been like in my peripheral for a long time. And there's parts of my life I'm drastically better in. And then there's others where I'm like only slightly better in, and I can still rework those. But it's just like the fact that it's written down, the fact that it's there gives me like it sits in my head as like hey, you're going to be slightly better here. So I agree with that. Sit down, write it down.
Can I share some tactical things that we've done that have made our I want people to be able to have the space to actually think about it. Because for some people, even the act of sitting down to think about it is like, when? Right? So I want to share some things that we've done after a lot of trial and error that might help you if you're listening. One is we noticed that our kids were we always fed them pretty good food. But we noticed, drop my pen, but we noticed that when they would eat lesser quality foods, when they would go to friends' houses or whatever and come home after having eaten candy and cake and muffins, they were nuts. And so it was harder for us to manage our own house. So we just said to ourselves, let's create a drawer in the house that has, it's at a height that the kids can reach, that is full of snacks that the kids don't have to ask us to eat. We call it the yes drawer. Just go to the yes drawer. If you're hungry, grab whatever you want out of there. There's beef jerky in there. There's some dried fruit in there. There are some better versions of granola bars and things of that nature in there. Nothing in that drawer is perfect. It all comes with its trade-offs. But it is worlds better than the alternative foods that they could be eating, which changes their energy in the house. That was a big thing for us. Another thing was getting over the idea that this is a 50-50 deal with me and my wife. She's really good at certain elements of parenting that cost me a lot of energy to do. She's better at putting the kids to bed. They want her, and she likes it more than I do. She's better at organizing the kids' schedules and making sure that they are where we want them to be when they're supposed to be there. She's better at packing and prepping for walking down to the beach. I'm better at cooking. I'm better at making money. I'm better at teaching our kids sports. I'm better at having hard conversations with our kids. So when it comes time for any one of those things to happen, we just do our job and allow the other person to do theirs without any resentment that Bedtime is an every night thing. And a hard conversation might be once a month. Right? So that was a really useful thing for us, was to be able to say, who's better at this, who likes it more. I can chip in whenever you need a reprieve because I'm capable. But this is your task. You own
Was
it.
that an explicit conversation that you had with your wife?
Yeah.
Was it like you sat down and you were like, let's talk about this?
It was never one like, let's sit down and divvy out the tasks. It was, hey, it seems like you really don't like cooking. And I happen to like cooking. I will cook. I will order all of the groceries. I will, go to the farmer's market. I will source our beef. I will do all of that. I will plan a menu and I will cook. And you help me making sure that everything else is in line so that I can just focus on cooking when I'm cooking. Great. Love that. Now, I don't, we need a more diverse menu. The kids don't eat, all that kind of stuff comes up and you have to iterate. But those conversations happen one at a time. The third thing that we did that I think was really useful is that we avoid, whenever possible, conversations about how we want to make decisions around and about our kids when our kids are around. So we make sure that we have a time specific that we're going to talk about that. She might come up to me and say, hey, I need to chat with you after the kids are down tonight about XYZ. Great. And the last thing that we did is we share a calendar. So she knows all of my work activities and I know all of our family activities. And so when there are things that are important for the family, they're on the schedule. And I know if I'm supposed to be there, I know if I'm wanted there, and I know if my wife is somewhere that I wasn't expecting her to be, right? Because I used to come home, success for me is home by 6 p.m. without my phone, present with my family. And I would come home at 6 p.m. and there's nobody there. And I'm like, I could have gotten a lot more work done for an hour. Where are you guys? She's like, we're at Girl Scouts. What are you talking about? So if it's on the calendar, now I'm like, oh, okay, I have more awareness.
Work for another hour.
Work another hour, or I can come home and just know there's no one going to be there.
Right. Okay, I like those. I think the middle one you were talking about, just like being on the same page and understanding it's not 50-50. That was like in our relationship that manifested as like we're not keeping score.
Yep.
It's like it's not am I doing the same as you? Are you doing the same as me? It's like we need to both feel valued and understand that there's different places that we contribute. And I think the way I've kind of viewed that and phrased it for myself is like, step one, I need to take care of myself. I need to make sure I'm okay on a very fundamental level, both mentally and emotionally and physiologically and everything in between. And then from there, can I do my best to outservice Taz? So like, can I go out of my way to help her however possible, and not like ask for anything, and not like, and I'm not doing it to like beat her or win. It's just to like, what can I do to look outside to help? And she's quite amazing, like with some of her stuff, but something she had to work on was recognizing there's certain things that are just, they don't come into my vision as important. And like, and they just don't sit in my mind as something that's an issue. So if they're more important to her, she either has to be very explicit with like, hey, can you do this? And even remind me when I forget, or she just has to do them. And there's things that are similar for me that are more important for me that I have to put more effort into because they are more important. So that not keeping score and like paying attention to like these things are more important, and it's not that they're more or less important in the grand scheme of things, but they're more important to me, so I have to work harder at them. Has been a good mindset, and as it, not without its conflict, where sometimes it's like, hey, you're not seeing this, and you're like, oh, okay, my bad. Like we gotta recommunicate and readjust, but it's been great, very similar in that middle ground. When you were first had kids, I remember you were talking about like being very explicit with your, okay, I'm gonna spend, I forget the time frame. It was like, I get a good hour-long bit of time with them each day that's like intentional time. And to me, I was like, that is not enough fucking time. Like, what's your mindset around that these days? Like, because Yeah, I'm curious. Now that you have three, and now that you're still running your
Four.
own business, you're an entrepreneur, you're doing all this stuff. So what does it look like?
Four. So a few things. One, I want to go back one step really quickly and just let people know of like we have all of these things that we've put in place to improve our relationship, to be better parents, to make our kids more self-sustaining. And it still goes to hell in a handbasket on a regular basis because that's life. I don't want people to think for 1 second that I'm like, we have it figured out. You should parent like us, right? The yes drawer is great until your kids are grabbing something from it at dinner time. And you're like, no, 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 no. Right now is dinner time.
It's a no drawer.
Yeah.
It's a no drawer.
Right. Like my oldest kid loves to make things and sell them and have money, which is interesting. So she has a bank account in my bedroom that I add 3% compounding interest on every month, and I teach her about how her account is growing. We're gonna have to cut that back because monthly compounding at 3% is pretty high over time. But anyway, the point is, she's like, I don't want much for dinner tonight. I'm like, you know what? You don't ever have to eat dinner again. You can have whatever you want. She's like, really? I said, yeah, but you do have to pay for the plate you didn't eat. And she's like, how much is dinner? I told her tonight's dinner would cost about $11 to make your plate. She's like, I can afford that. I said, how many nights in a row can you afford that? in 2 months, you'd be out of money. You'd have nothing. She's like, oh, I'm gonna eat dinner then. I'm like, great idea. So the math you were talking about is I told you I need 90 good minutes a day. And after that, I'm fried. I think I'm now good to go to about 2 hours. But that is still my reality. And what
2 hours with the kids.
2 hours of uninterrupted, totally present time with the kids. Yes. And when you break that down, I get pushback on that from parents all the time. And I'm like, look, this is how my brain works. I love being around my kids in these spurts. And when you ask me to do more than that, I can lie and tell you I just love spending all the time in the world with my kids. But I don't. I love my kids to no end. And I love spending 2 hours of uninterrupted time per day with them. That means when I'm with them, I'm not on my phone. I'm not thinking about work. I'm not doing something else. I'm never too tired to play with them. It doesn't matter how tired I am. I'm not too tired to play with them. And I ask parents all the time when they criticize me or give me crap for what I'm describing. If you look at all of the time that you spend with your kids throughout the day, do you think that you get 2 hours of no phone, totally intentional, completely present time with your kids? Because what's important for people to understand when I say 2 hours of that is that it doesn't mean I don't want to be in their presence more than 2 hours a day. It means I only want to be 100% focused on them 2 hours a day. So for example, tomorrow we're going to my uncle's house, or tonight we're going to my uncle's house. If it was summer, we'd be in his pool. I want to do that all day long because they're not my exclusive responsibility. The family jumps in and helps out. I love being around my kids, but I don't have to be responsible for it full time. Do you follow me there?
I get that. Yeah, I totally follow you. I think what I would not argue, but what I would say is that as your kids age, that 100% responsibility thing, I mean, as you'll probably have found out with your 9-year-old, like you don't, even when you're like super present with them, they're like, I'm going to do my own thing over here.
Yes.
And so as they become and as they become friends with each other, like I don't know how your kids play. Like my kids will play for hours with each other. And when I'm like, hey, let's go play some badminton, we'll play for like 30 minutes and they're like, I'm gonna go swimming.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't want and or need me, So like that time almost becomes like, please spend this time with me.
Yeah.
And it's an interesting thing. I think what you're saying is pretty darn applicable to infants and young kids because they require so much of your actual life energy to keep them entertained to some degree. And I would say that a lot of people don't put in that actual work. They're very distracted when they're with their kids. It definitely sounds cold and harsh though, and I see why people give you pushback on like, Yep, just 2 hours a day. That's it. I can't stand them any other time. And I don't think that's what you're saying.
That's not what I'm saying at all.
No. It's just, I think people, when they hear it, they take it as that versus what it actually is, which is 2 hours of like deep work, if nothing else. This is.
I think there's something that's missing here that perhaps you don't have the perspective on because there would be no need for you to. The way I present that to people depends on the way people can hear it. Right. And so I know my sparring partner, Pat Barber, can hear it like this. But I know that my friend Dave at the beach needs to hear it differently. And so for him, I'll share, look, I love 2 hours of completely uninterrupted time with my kids per day. After that, I like some help. And that's a totally different way for him to hear it than I can present it to you, for example. And then the questions become around like, what do you mean by help? And it's a different conversation. To speak to what you were just describing with as they age, 100%. Right? So my favorite activity in the world is going on a bike ride with one of my kids alone, me and that one kid, whether it's number one or number two, because number three can't ride a two-wheeler and keep up yet. But I love going on bike rides with them. And there are oftentimes I'll ask them, do you want to go on a bike ride? No. I'm like, oh, damn it. If they ask me, I am in 100%. And it never lasts 2 hours. It's always, 20, 30 minutes. And then they're like, okay, let's go home. I'm done. And then one of the other things that I don't know if this makes it more difficult for me to want to spend more time than otherwise. I have 3 girls who love doing girly things. And I'm not excited to do those activities if my kids weren't in them. And so doing those activities with my kids does provide me a level of excitement for a period of time. And then it's the mundacity of the activity and not the time with the kid. And I don't want to do the activity. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, it makes sense for me. Like I have that way with my 3 boys. Like even though they do like the stuff that I'd like to do, I'm just really good at a lot of stuff. Not to pat myself on the back, that like when I play with them, I'm not. It's not a challenge for me. So it becomes unfun. Like I'd actually prefer to just watch them, and I think I spend a lot of my time around them watching, and I'm like totally present, and that I find to be super enjoyable. Like watching them learn how to play wiffle ball or pitching to them or something like that. Like I'm not actually engaging in the battle because the battle is fun for me. Like that's my life, and so there's a couple games that are starting to get there where they can actually challenge me. One of those games is Set. Have you ever played Set?
I don't think so.
So it's a card game that you lay out these cards that are different shapes, different colors, and different like patterns. And there's 1, 2, or 3 of the shapes that are on there, and you have to either match all 3 of the different things, or they have to all be different. They can't be the same. So you get this like 4 cards that are like 12 cards that are out, and you have to find a set of 3. And you just sit and stare at it, and you go, okay, set, and then you collect your set, and then you put out 3 more cards. And it's like these kids are getting good to the point where like and they're all uniquely different. Like my oldest son will go on these streaks where he'll just smash my ass in that game. And then my third son, Fox, has like he's 5 and he's starting to just like be really quick with it. Like he couldn't do it at first, and now all of a sudden he's like he's genuinely beat me in a few games, and like that's exciting. And so I'm like, you guys want to play Set?
Yeah.
It's been quite fun when I can lose. And but I do like my youngest is like, Choo Choo, let's play Train, and I'm like, I don't want to play Train.
Right. Yeah.
This is boring shit, like I'll sit and watch you play Train and watch you like put it around there. But the truth is, they don't need you to do the thing. They need you to be there, and they need you to like engage and just be paying attention to them. Like you're not their entertainment. And I think that's one thing you've probably found with most kids, like when you have more kids. Like you don't need to be the thing that entertains them. They'll entertain the shit out of themselves if they're not given a device that completely distracts them. If you just put them in a room with like even an empty room, like they'll figure it out. Like they're pretty brilliant little creatures.
Yeah, you make a really good point there because we have some games in the house. Game called Spot It, game called Genius Square or Genius Cube,
Spot it, yeah.
and there's a third one that I'm not remembering right now. But like my oldest is learning how to play Mancala,
Yeah,
and
college good.
and like yes, absolutely. Like that stuff I could do all day. The watching again that does get old for me. Even if I'm not the entertainment, I like to be a body in motion.
Yeah, I get that. I get that. I have a very interesting life up here, with on the property with like the space that we have. So watching them is a little different because they'll be like in a mud kitchen.
Yes.
And they'll be like digging holes and they'll be finding lizards and they'll be catching snakes and like there's like, or they'll be going on the zip line or they'll be swimming in the pool and you know we've got these. They'll sink themselves to the bottom of the pool and walk across and I'm like, this is really interesting to watch the dynamics. We also have 2 young girls who live on the property who they play with for like hours. So watching those dynamics become very interesting to me as well.
I can definitely see that. I'm inspired by the property that you built with Taz. Kim and I actually talk about it from time to time. I don't want to be in California. I love the family that I'm close to in New York. I don't want to be in New York either. But, you know, our property is 60 feet by 100 feet, and that's considered property where I live. And the weather isn't the best all year round. And so there are variables that make it a different kind of challenge. Let's just say that I'm not complaining about. They are the reality that we chose. I'm taking a page out of your book. This January, from January 1 to February 15th, I'm taking the family to go live in Europe. And so we rented a house in Granada, Spain.
Dude, have you been to Spain?
No.
Dude, it's super cool.
I'm excited.
We'll come visit. That'd be great.
We're in Granada.
Okay.
I'm excited for the adventure that's going to be. I'm not anticipating like a really relaxing trip. But I'm excited for the adventure that's going to be because I'm not going to be working during the day.
Rad. So rad. That's going to be so fun and hard. And like what's interesting is like we've been on all these big vacations, right? We did big world trips and all that kind of stuff. And there's times where like I'm a doer. Like I really don't like sitting around doing nothing. So like we'll go to a place and I'll be like, so what are we going to do? And Taz's like, oh, we're just hanging out. And I'm like, I don't do well with this. Like, I need to do something. Is there like a gym somewhere that I can go to? Is there like surfing I can go to? Is there like a museum we could go? Like, I have such a hard time sitting. But I look back on all the trips and just go, I loved that trip. The food's amazing, the whole thing. But there's times during the trip where I get so angsty of like, I need to do. So I wish you the best. It's going to be fun.
Well, one of the reasons that we chose Granada is we get snow here intermittently in New York, and my kids love snow. I didn't want to go somewhere that was like frigid winter snow, and I wanted to go somewhere that you would know you got dropped here. You're no longer in the United States. Like that was important to me. It's not like just some city that got built up. So Granada is a very unique city unto itself. Really good food scene. It'll be in the 50s when we're there. And we're like a 20-minute drive from the Sierra Nevada mountain range where it's snowing the entire time we're there. And we can sled, we can ski, which we've never done before. We can tube, we can gondola. All of that stuff we can do just a 20-minute Uber ride or whatever the rideshare company out there is away.
You're not getting a car?
No.
Okay.
Not as of now.
I mean, you do you. You do you. As a man who's done a lot of world travel, cars are very nice to have in these places. But you do you. Like, you have fun.
We have resigned to the reality that we have no idea what we don't know, and that anything that we've already planned can change.
It's gonna be so fun, man. Like, what is not fun with some of the kids at your age is like they don't really like going to really old museums
Right.
and like walking through them. Like if you're actually wanting to read the exhibits and enjoy that, like we went to Scotland and we had the three, and one of them was like an infant, and it was freezing cold, and it's like cobble street, so you can't push like a cart and stuff. And there's these ancient old castles and stuff, and it's really fun to walk through them. But you do it at a quick clip, and you're not actually taking on board a lot of the information. And there's going to be a profound level of discomfort with the bundling up and unbundling and bundling up and unbundling
Yes.
constantly. But it's like, it's so fun, and the experience is so valuable for them. I'm excited for you. All right, I got a couple more before I don't want to hold you too long. We'll be done here in a second. At one point in time, you said to me that I should watch Bluey, and that it reminded you of me. And I'm curious what you meant by that and what that was.
One of the greatest things that I take from my friendship with you and Taz, and that Kim takes also, is the care. I hope I'm not mischaracterizing it, but the carefreeness of it. My kids are going to experiment with things that are potentially dangerous to them in a way that is not so dangerous that it's unreasonable they do it. The dad in Bluey is fun. Their relationship is really important, the parents, and they take both their responsibility as parents and their responsibility as partners seriously to raise their kids and educate their kids in a way that is an enjoyable experience. And when, I don't know if it's a corner of the world where New Zealand and Australia are a thing, but our next door neighbors are from Sydney. They still have their Australian accents and all that kind of stuff. And they parent in a very similar way, and they live in a very similar way to the way that you and Taz do, except that they're not on a homestead, right? And there's a lot that I get value out of from being around that. And some of the value is, like I said, they're going to experiment, they're going to explore. Other parents are going to think it's crazy. Just let them do it. And in our world, what that manifests as is my daughter says, "Can I go skateboard in the street?" Sure. Right? Like, could something bad happen while she's skateboarding in the street in front of our house? Sure. Is the likelihood of it like even remotely high? No. Is the trust that I put in her to allow her to do it more valuable than the mitigation of the risk? I think absolutely. And some of that I get from you and Taz and that show rubbing off on me and Kim as like, hey, just let them do it. What's the worst that happens?
Right. Okay. I like that. Well, thank you. I was honored by it when you said it, and I appreciate the clarity on what that meant. I would say that's a fair categorization of us. I would say we've worked really hard to be. It's interesting because people are like, you let them do a lot, and it's like it's not like I'm not paying attention.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like when I let my sons walk around the pool, I'm like not watching to see if they fall in. It's just that I'm not hovering over them. Like I think the difference is I'm not like at the pool party wasted and just letting my kids do whatever. I'm like sitting and watching real closely, but from 100 feet away, like
Right.
letting them and then be like, okay, what's the worst case that could happen right now? Like they could fall in the water and be in there for about 30 seconds or 20 seconds while I ran over and dove it.
Mm-hmm.
Let's let them walk close to the edge and see what happens.
Yeah.
It's very intentional, and I watch very closely, but it's from afar.
Look, we're in a beach town, and when we go to the beach in the summer during the season, it's anywhere from 8 to 15 sets of parents and all of their kids, and it's amazing. And at any time during the day, there's a very reasonable possibility that I have a general awareness of where my kids are. I know there are parents over there, right? There's at least one parent with that group of 6. I'm not worried about it. My daughter's in the ocean. There's a parent that I know who's fairly close by. I can see her. I'm not jumping into the ocean because my daughter might drown in my absence, but I can see her if I need to. So it's similar in that way.
Yeah. It's like the constant vigilance. I think the awareness and the constant vigilance is super important, in my opinion. And then how much you involve yourself is dependent upon your level of comfort and the capability of the kids. You know, as the kids become more capable, like I could let my kids climb a 100-foot tree out back and not pay attention to them now. When they were younger, I couldn't. I would need to sit under the tree and be like, this is good, you're okay. But now I can just be like, yeah, go free. Like I can let my 5-year-old swim in the pool without me watching. Like he can be up there with his brothers and they'll be totally fine. You know, I won't let my 2-year-old walk around the pool with no one without an adult there. But it's like you watch them become more competent, and some of them are more competent in areas and some of them are less. But like I feel it's really interesting when parents come over and visit, because their kids will want to engage with my kids in the same way, but I have to be like 10 times more vigilant because I don't think they're as capable. In fact, I know they're not as capable as my kids because my kids have had the freedom to grow capable.
Well, that's the key, right? They're less capable because they're less experienced, and they're less experienced oftentimes because their parents don't allow them the space to have the experience. I think if we came over with our kids would be less experienced than yours. And I would enjoy let's sit back. Let's see how this goes of it.
Yeah. Oh, and I think that's fun. I think it's great. I think that intermingling is what communities are for. Is like, because, you know, what we found is when our kids spend time with young girls, for instance, they often get their imaginations blown. Like the kids will like this imaginary play is very different than their like tactile like break you play.
Yes.
And it's really good to watch them do it because all of a sudden they're playing these games that are well outside their normal range. So like that intermingling of families and sexes and like is just so important. I think we should do this again sometime, but we should end this here so we don't go too long in the episode. What's one of your current, biggest struggles you're going through?
I'm in a phase of life I've never been in before. And I don't know who I'm supposed to be in it all the time. So I've got my business to the fortunate position where I really don't have a job. And the job I want to have, because I love what I do, we're a mission-driven company. And we're not even close to denting the mission. And so I know my job is to get out and be the megaphone. I know that my job is to bring the best people in the world in to help us do it. And I'm not exactly sure how to do that for the first time. And so it's harder for me on a day-to-day basis to just be present where I am because I'm trying to learn something new that's really challenging and fun at times, but not fun at other times. That's the biggest thing I'm struggling with right now.
It's a unique position too. I don't think many people have. I mean, there are people who've been in that same situation, but it's like it's not a common one that people are like, I've worked myself out of a job and now I'm looking to figure out. Yeah, it's like my meaning and my passion.
Well, I have clarity on my meaning and my passion. What I'm lacking is awareness as to how to be within that as most effectively as possible.
Right. Okay. Fun. What's one of your biggest successes right now?
My marriage. I'm married to an amazing woman who I'm not half of who I am if not for her. And anyone who's been married long enough who's honest with themselves has probably had moments within their marriage where they're like, this is really hard. I'm not sure why we decided to do this, but we're in it. Whatever the language you use for yourself is. And there were phases in my relationship with my wife where we were roommates. We knew we were on the same team. We knew we were in the same house. We knew we both wanted to be there, but we lost our way a little bit of like why, how, all of that kind of stuff. And we worked really hard to really be there for each other. And I think that that's a great success story.
I think it's huge. And I feel very similar. Part of what I do when I do all this Father's Guild stuff is like, I look at my life and my relationship with my wife, and I want other people to have this. Like, I want other people to have the feelings they do about their wife that I have about mine, which I feel like you do. And so I feel like I can relate to that. And I'm always examining, like, what is it? Like, how did we get so lucky? You know, like, what have we done? Where's the work been that we can highlight for other people of like, hey, do some work here. It's worth it.
Well, I can't speak for you, but for me, it was on myself.
Of course. Yeah. Yeah. What was your biggest area of work for you?
Oh, discontinuing treating people the way that I wanted to be treated, and the beginning of treating people the way that they wanted to be treated. I never imagined that people wanted to be treated differently than I did. It just never occurred to me. And coming to grips with that, it's like, oh, wow, okay, that explains a lot. But now, how do I do it? How do I do it?
That's the journey. That's the journey is
Yes.
figuring that all out. Yeah. Dude, I'm glad that you went through that, and I'm also going through that. I think we all are. I think once you can recognize that, that's a huge one. I think that the love languages thing kind of starts to unpack that, and then it's just a constant examining of the world around you and your place in it.
All of those little tests help. And at the end of the day, they're only as good as consistent application of the results is.
Yeah, that's a fair statement. Well, cool, man. Where can people find you if they want to find Mr. Dr. Sean Pasuch? Mr. Doctor.
At Dr. Sean Pastuch. Anywhere.
Okay. Hell yeah, man. Thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Boom.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The Next Step. If you'd like to rate us on iTunes or Spotify, that would be awesome. If not, we totally understand. If you want to check out any of our merch, you can go to thefathersguild.com, where you can pick up some awesome t-shirts or anything else that we have for offer there at the moment. Thank you again for taking the time to listen to an episode. And if you thought it was worthy, please share it with other fathers that you think might benefit from having conversations around fatherhood. Thank you again for your time, and we will see you on the next episode.